Hello! Now, what better on a miserable weekend than a nice hot pon of Lobbies? A pon of Lobbies we're having tonight. LobScuse, or Scouse if you're a Scouser. Basically, a meat stew. But the traditional food of Wigan and Lee is Lobbies, or hot pot. Tater ash is another one that you can make with mince or with corned beef, but we're going to make the one with beef stewing beef, which are the cheap cuts of meat, cheap cuts of beef, and it's a peasant dish, Lobbies. Because we come from Wigan and we live in a mud hut, that's what we're going to be making. We're going to be making a pan of Lobbies tonight for the weekend. Good hearty food. It's a winter dish really, autumn, winter, when the nights are getting cold, but it's going to be doing nothing but pee down all weekend apparently, and we can't go around seeing our friends because Boris has put us all on lockdown again. So we might as well make a pan of Lobbies and get drunk. Right, I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so for traditional Lancashire Lobbies, that's all you need really. I suppose it's not 100% traditional this, because we're going to be using red potatoes. Back in the day it probably would have been turnips and swede. You may well have had carrots. You'd have had some sort of root vegetable, but it wouldn't be potatoes. You know why? Because back in Viking times, when LobScuse was introduced by the Scandinavian Viking people, the Danes, the Norse, we didn't have potatoes over here or anywhere in Europe because it's a South American vegetable, the potato. So we would have probably had some other kind of root vegetable. Potentially, I think parsnips have been knocking about for a bit. Turnips certainly have, and swede. Neeps. You would have had meat. You'd have had some sort of cattle, or maybe even goat or sheep or something like that. But we're going to be doing it with beef steak. So turn away now, vegetarians, because that's what we're cooking it with. So it's beef steak. There's about £1.75 pounds there of beef steak. Half a pound of butter. We've got 5 medium-sized carrots. We've got some mixed herbs, which is, I'm going to be putting rosemary in this, I think, as well. But you've got thyme, marjoram, oregano or oregano, sage, basil, and parsley. But I'm going to put some rosemary as well in there because I think it might need a bit of rosemary. Usually put rosemary in. 4 medium-sized onions, a full bulb of garlic. And there's probably about £1.5 pounds there of potatoes, which are the red potatoes. But we're going to make some Lobbies. We're not going to call it Scouse, boys and girls, because, we're just not. But we're going to call it Lancashire Lobbies, which we eat in Wigan and Leith. Wigan and Leith. Okay, so there are the onions, and as you can see, they're pretty roughly or rustically chopped. It's a peasant dish, this, and we are northern peasants or Vikings that are eating it. So yeah, you don't have to be fancy at all, so just roughly chop those up. Now, of course, you can use oil if you want to do, but I'm pretty sure that the Vikings didn't have cold-pressed olive oil. I'm fairly sure they didn't have that. What they would have had is butter or animal fat. They'd probably cooked it in its own fat or something like that, but this is just to cook the mushrooms off. So we're going to excuse me, we're going to melt down the butter into a kind of ghee, and then in go the onions. Alright, and they're going to sort of sweat down and caramelise a little bit for about 10 minutes, stirring them like this. Let that butter soak in, and then we're going to put the meat in. Now, some people flour the meat and sear it. supposedly to lock in the flavour so the flavour doesn't escape, but it's all being cooked in the same pan. So for me, that's too Frenchified, and it's not the way of the Northman, that I don't think. So the meat's just going to go in with that. We're going to make up a stock as well now. So I'm going to put the meat in with that once that's been sweated down a little longer. So another 5 minutes, the meat's going to go into that. Now you can call me Marco Pure White. We're using the Knorr beef stock cubes. So I'm just going to crumble that into there. We're going to put 2 in. At the end, I'm also going to add a little bit of onion gravy in with it, but at this stage we're just going to get the stock on the go. So all you do is crumble that in there. We'll get 2 in there, give it a stir, and in it'll go. So we're going to get the meat in there now. Just chuck it in. Like I say, you don't have to be Marco Pure White at all. It'll be right, as they say in Leith and Wigan, right. So that'll just go in there. I'll give it a good coating. I'll start to brown that meat, but I won't be covering it in flour and herbs at this stage. I'll just brown it in the butter and onions and give it another 5 minutes, and then we'll add the stock. Right, in goes the Norse. That's been going for about, altogether about 12 minutes now, about 6 minutes with the onions on their own, and about 6 minutes with the stew beef. And add in the stock. Now I'm using Knorr stock cubes. Other stock cubes are available, such as Oxo. But that's going to be brought back to the boil. There was a litre of water gone in there with the 2 Knorr stock cubes, and that's going to come back to the boil now. I'm not keen on that. What's that? It's coming out, whatever it is. So there they are. They're in. Now that'll come back to the boil. Once it's at the boil, I'll reduce it to like a sort of low rolling boil for about an hour before I put the carrots and potatoes in there, but we'll leave it at that for the time being. I may well put some Italian seasoning in, but I might well just leave that till later on when we put the potatoes and carrots in. Doesn't really matter. It all goes in the same pot, so all them flavours will all be in the pot. I'll just cover that with the lid. Yeah, and keep an eye on it, stirring occasionally. So once that's up to the boil, I'll check it, turn it down to a simmer, and then stir it about every 10 minutes or so while I watch the Joe Rogan podcast. Alright, okay, now that's been cooking on a slow simmer for coming up to an hour now. And the reason we have to cook that meat for so long is so the connective tissues in the meat break down. That's going to need another hour, but we're going to be putting the carrots and the potatoes in with it. Now you can put peas in as well if you want to, but we'll put those in close to the end. I like peas, a bit more extra protein in the mix, so we'll be doing that. That's not strictly canon. You're not supposed to put the peas in really into a normal traditional Lobbies, but I'm a maverick, so we're going to be putting some frozen peas in there about 25 minutes before the end. So yeah, that's down to the slow simmer. We're going to put the potatoes and carrots in now that we're going to chop up. We've washed the potatoes and carrots, but we've not skinned them. But what we are going to do is chop them into cubes. I pussied out. We want this to be an authentic old Lancashire dish without the peas, really, because that is against canon. The herbs, the rest of it, the butter, the meat, There's enough protein in that already, so the peas would be a bit overkill. I do like peas, but for this particular recipe, we're going to leave them out. Nothing to stop you leaving them in. You just put half a pound of peas in there and Bob's your uncle at this 1 hour 20-minute stage, but we're not going to do that this time. It's going to be a traditional Viking, Wigan warrior, Lee Centurion, Lobbies dish, this. Enjoy. Okay, there's about 3/4 of a pound of carrots, chopped into sort of nibbly chunks. They're going in. There's about a pound of the red Duke of York potatoes, new potatoes. Don't have to be new potatoes, but they are new potatoes, and they're going to be going in. I'm going to bring that up to the boil, and once that's at the boil, we're going to leave it for about 5 minutes and then reduce it down to the simmer again. But we're also going to add in a sprinkle, or 1.5 tablespoons, which I'm going to say that is, of the mixed herbs. And also, I'd already added the rosemary into it, but there's plenty in there. I've also put some garlic in there as well, some dried garlic powder into that. Only a bit of it, about a teaspoonful of it, because the kids and the good lady farmer are not big garlic fans, and that's why I didn't add the garlic in at the beginning. What I will do when I'm adding it to mine is I'll put mine into a separate pan and heat it up with the minced garlic, crushed garlic. Because if you do that at the end as well, you get all the volatile oils out of the garlic, and they don't get reduced down or destroyed by the cooking process. The rawer, or the more raw that you can get your garlic, the better for you, really. The more medicinal benefit you can get from it. But there is a little bit of garlic powder in there, just for taste. And plenty of herbs. That will be very flavoursome. So we'll bring that up to the boil. Leave it at the boil for about probably 7 or 8 minutes, and then reduce it down to a simmer. So that's been bubbling away now for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to cover it and reduce it down to a simmer. Like that. We're not going to see him again for about another hour. So I'll be stirring that about every 15 minutes. We're going to leave it for an hour just to let the meat continue to break down, and also for the carrots and the potatoes to soften. Right, so that's another hour later. Now some people will use cornstarch to thicken it, which is perfectly legitimate, but I will be using Bisto onion gravy granules, a tablespoonful. So you don't need much. So there's a litre of liquid in there, mixed in with the Bisto gravy granules. Now you've got to bear in mind, really, this has been cooking for like 2 hours and 20 minutes. And it's going to be taking another 10 or 15 minutes with the cover on to be ready. But I'll tell you what, boys and girls, it's going to be good. And you don't need any more salt because the two Knorr stock cubes and the tablespoon of Bistro gravy granules, onion gravy that is, normal gravy you'd do, beef gravy, but that's just what we had left, and that's gone in. It's a peasant dish. You can use many variations on a theme for this. And as always with Lobbies, or Scouse, I shouldn't say Scouse, it makes me feel bilious. Viking LobScuse, without the true Viking elements because it's just got the potatoes in, not the swede and the turnip and all that. Basically, that's all you need. And I'll tell you what, it's beautiful. With the butter and all the rest of it, the gravy that's in there, the herbs, it's going to probably be a bit rich, that, for most palates. And that's why we cut it with our homemade beetroots. Pickled beetroot. Now that'll cut through the fattiness and the stodginess and be the perfect accompaniment for our lobbies. And that, my friends, is Lancashire Lobbies. The base food of the Wigan warrior. Now you can have that with either pickled red cabbage, or like I've done there, with the beetroot, pickled beetroot. And it's gorgeous. Alright, a true Northern English delicacy there for you. Try it out. Give it a whirl. It's a peasant dish that's fit for a king. Beautiful. Crack on. If I don't see you through the week, I'll see you through the window. Ta-da!